morning, musicians. Nice to be here again. Today's subject is intervals, our intervals, major, minor, and perfect intervals. And this follows up very closely upon the half step, whole step that we did, the study that we did last week. We're going to start with a drawing. And I think if you were to do this once a day, just sit down and make this drawing once a day, in a few days, you would have this light bulb moment saying, aha, I see how they're patterns. So what I'm going to draw here is a rectangle. It doesn't have anything to do with these staves back here. So you draw your rectangle, and then this is going to be a keyboard, by the way, a piano keyboard. But we're going to start with the white notes. This is not my forte, but you'll get the point. And you can do this too. And they do get better the more you do them. So we're going to start with an alphabetical letter. It doesn't matter what we start with. Let's say we're going to start with G. What comes after G in the alphabet? A. I'm going to sit down here. B, C, D. You see what we're doing? We're writing the white notes. We've come an octave here. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's another octave. A, B, C. So how do we know where the white notes touch and where the white notes have a black note in between? It has to do with the E and F, B and C half steps. There's no black note between these two. So this is a G to an A. You see what we have to do here? We have to draw our black note. There it is. A to B, we need a black note because that's a whole step on the piano. There we are, B to C. That has to stay white note adjacent. C to D, we need a black note. D to E, my drawing is horrible today, but doesn't matter. E to F, there's our half step. No black note there. So when you sit down, all you need to know, all you need to remember is the distance between E and F, B and C, there's no black note in between. So when you sit down every day and you write this, pretty soon you're going to get the lay of how these intervals relate. A and B, there we are with another B and C. B and C here, E and F here. So that's the first thing I want you to do. So now we're on to the difference between, maybe I'll use this for a minute, major, minor, and perfect intervals. So as the intervals go, seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths are always major or minor. Now they can be augmented or diminished, but their natural form, the first form based upon the major and minor scales, are major and minor. We'll get to augmented and diminished intervals in a couple weeks. The unison, the fourth, the fifth, and the octave are called perfect. That's based upon the physics of the sound waves, which we're not going to go into, and I think I suggested somewhere on a worksheet, take a side adventure on the internet and just look up physics of music, overtone series, and it explains a little bit. It's very interesting. You'll be able to find different takes on that. So intervals are always defined by their the distance between the lines and the spaces. So if we have line 1 and we have line 2, this is a third because it's line, space, line. In treble clef, it would be E, skip the F, and go to the G. So this is always a third. Line to line or space to space. That will always be a third. And that's an easy one to start with because they're always lines and lines, spaces and spaces. Thirds always are. From one space to the next space. These, by the way, are melodic intervals because they come one after the other. This is called a harmonic interval because they're sounded at the same time. So seconds, let's do a few seconds. F to G in treble clef. That's a second. F to G, two alphabetical letters. Line to space. Line to space. Space to line. Those are all seconds. Seconds and thirds are always major or minor. Now they're always naturally major or minor. They can be altered into larger or smaller intervals, but we'll be getting to that. That's not really important right now. Let's go to a bass clef and let's write a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Line, space, line, space, line. D, E, F, G, A. That's a fifth. And that's a perfect interval, perfect fifth. Let's play a fourth. A fourth will always be a space and a line because the fifth is line to line or space to space. So they're going to always work odd and even in that way. Unisons, thirds, fifths, sevenths, ninths, 11ths, and 13ths will always be line to line to line to line or space to space to space to space. The intervals between like seconds, fourths, sixths, octaves will always be a line and a space. Let's do an octave here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's an octave, an eighth. It's a perfect interval. It's a line and a space. We used to have a book that had, it was pretty cool, in one of my theory studies, that they would have an interval written like this. No line, nothing like that. And you would have to guess what it was. And they would have an interval like that. And they would have a wide one like this. And the idea was to try to define based upon the spatial relationship of the notes. If I put a line there, of course it becomes a third. If I put a line there, that might change your perspective on whether it's a fourth or a fifth. In this case, it would be a fourth. If I put a line here, that's going to be an octave because lines and spaces together are always going to be the even numbers. Let's talk major and minor seconds for a bit. If we look at our keyboard here, every white note B and C and E and F, being the half steps, are minor seconds. B to C is a minor second because there's no note in between. It's the smallest distance between two notes. If we write B to C sharp, as you remember, you've learned that sharps raise a note a half step, flats lower a note a half step. This becomes a major second because, as you can see here, B, skip the C, go to C sharp right here, and that becomes a major second. So major becomes smaller. Say we had F, and G, that's a major second because there's a black note in between. If we want to make this a minor second, we're going to either have to flat the G, F to G flat, to make it a minor second, or sharp the F. So you have F sharp to G, and that's now a minor second. This is now a minor second. So minor becomes larger by a half step to become major. Major becomes smaller by a half step to become minor. That's true with seconds and thirds and sixths and sevenths. So let's try some thirds. There's an F and there's an A. So that's a major third because it's 4 half steps. F to F sharp to G, G to G sharp to A. 2 whole steps, F to G. You can see that this is a whole step, and this is a whole step. So this is a major third. If we want to make it a minor third, how do we do it? We can do it 2 ways. We can flat the top note and make this 3 half steps instead of 4. I should be playing these for you. F, F sharp, G, G, G sharp, A. Major third, minor third. So another way to make this a minor third, and that is to lower the bottom note because you make that set of intervals smaller. F sharp, A. That's a minor third. That's a minor third. Minor third is always 3 half steps. And on your handout this week, you've got this nice little chart telling you how many half steps we have between the primary, major, and perfect intervals. Let's talk fourths for a bit. Let's go G to C. G, A, same here, G, A, B, C. It's always going to be a fourth. As we know, all our fourths and fifths are perfect. It's just their name. We're not going to talk about how to change perfect intervals yet, although you do have a diagram this week. Perfect intervals can become larger and they become augmented. If they become smaller, they're diminished. And we're going to talk about that more in a couple weeks. Your fifth is perfect. Let's make a sixth. So right now, how do we know whether this is a major or minor sixth? We have to base it upon the major scale and the number of half steps, or how we define our intervals. G to A is a whole step. We can do it down here too. G to A is a whole step. A to B is a half. A to B is another whole step. Excuse me. B to C is a half step. C to D is a whole step, and D to E is a whole step. This would be major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth. And we will define the number of half steps in all our intervals. You've got that in the handout this week. So sit down at your keyboard or sit down in this and try to find that out. Let's go to a major seventh. Let's go to a seventh. This is actually a minor seventh because based upon the major scale, this would be F sharp. And in a way, I'm ahead of myself because in next week's session, we're going to talk about major scales, and that will make this a lot easier to understand. But this is a seventh, and this is an eighth, which is a perfect eighth. So I'm not going to stay too much longer on major and minor. Be able to identify whether they're sixths, sevenths, fifths, fourths, octaves, seconds, all of your intervals. That's the main thing to think about this week. Okay, thank you. Happy music making.